40-some years ago, I lived four or five blocks from Rudy's store. And I would walk by it all the time and look in the window and see the Buddhas. And it's a tiny little store next to the Village Vanguard on 7th Avenue. I lived on Bank Street. And I'd always stop when I looked at the Buddhas. I would just be very impressed. He had one about 8-foot Buddha in the front window, lying on its side, big Thai Buddha, very impressive, and it always got my attention. And I've told this story many, many times about how I walked into the store once and told Rudy I wanted to buy a Buddha. And I'd been looking around the store and seen in a case he had some very small Buddhas, and my eye was... Is that not working? Oh, really? Sorry guys, the camera's being adjusted. I saw this little broken Buddha that I was attracted to, and then I dismissed it because it was broken. And Rudy, when I went up to him, this very cherubic big guy at the table, I said, I'd like to buy a Buddha. He said, how much do you have to spend? I said, I forget how much I had, like $5 at most. He just looked at me like, I don't think there was a Buddha in the store available for $5, but I... he took me seriously, and he walked over to the case and went right to the broken Buddha. And he said, here, this is for $5. I said, yeah, I like that one, but it's broken. And he said, seek perfection in yourself, not in external objects. And I told him that was a great sales pitch, and I bought it. And I went home with this little Buddha, and then I began a journey, a spiritual journey, that started at Bank Street and went literally around the world and came back almost to Bank Street, but ultimately to Rudy's store. I did not have to go around the world to find Rudy. I'd already been there. I'd already found him. He was already speaking to me. He already sold me a Buddha. But I couldn't connect to him. I really had no idea who he really was or what his gift was. And I had to go, how many miles is that? 20-some thousand miles around the world in order to be able to walk back into his store and really find him. It's a great old story, and it's a great metaphor. Because every one of us has visited intimately and repeatedly our own self, the teacher within. We all know the teacher within. And that teacher is closer than 4 blocks away. It's always there. It's right there. And yet we rarely go into the shop. We rarely walk into that space. We rarely acknowledge it. We're not even certain that it's the teacher. It's just somebody on 7th Avenue in a big store. Actually, it was a little store. And so every one of us sort of begins the journey of 20,000 miles to walk the 4 blocks. We all have to take the journey in order to feel worthy, in order to develop a sense of value for what's sitting right there. It's called the spiritual journey. It's a classical thing. Everybody who wants a spiritual life seems to set off on it, and you stop in ashrams, and you meet teachers, and you go through the desert, you get distracted by all sorts of things in those various cities you come to, you experience the joys and pleasures of the flesh, you just have a life, and this all kind of moving toward this goal, and many people get lost along the way. They're on a spiritual journey, but then they get caught up in, how am I going to pay for this next event? I've got to teach school, I got to do something, I got to get some money. There's all of these things that start to happen on the spiritual journey, both literally in terms of getting around the world, or figuratively getting through your life and arriving back at you. And mostly what I have experienced in people is how lost they are. And the great thing about teaching a class is that you attract people who at least are aware, somewhat in themselves, that they're on a journey, that they're looking for something, that there's something that's missing or something they want. And if I told them, which I often do now, it's right there, it doesn't register. What do you mean it's right there? Where? You can't find it. And so I have to, as a teacher, relax and be patient, because people have to complete that cycle. They have to complete the journey, and the journey is fraught with very classical aspects. You meet archetypal figures, you meet enemies, you meet tricksters, you meet gurus, teachers, helpers. You meet that which wants to take you away from the journey, and you meet that which wants to support the journey. And depending on how hungry you are for this, you will get to, if you will, the end. But what you discover when you sit here and teach is the variabilities of hunger and of purpose and of drive. I look at so many people and I go, they're not going to get there. They don't want it enough. It's not going to happen. Not this lifetime. I look at people and I see the story getting thicker and thicker and denser, heavier and heavier, and you go, boy, how will they ever get out of that one? How do you pull that off? And they won't. Not in this lifetime. And then you look at people who are truly sincere in their journey, who've really suffered, who really get that there's something to be gotten, if you will. And you realize you can help them. You can help them. And then you see something rise up in them that Rudy defined with one simple word. It's called resistance. The closer you get to finding, the more you resist it. The more you get afraid. And what is it that's getting afraid? Well, it's rather clear actually to me at this point. The ego mind is starting to realize that it's identified with the spiritual journey. It goes, I'm spiritual, I'm a spiritual person, I want to surrender, I want to be open, I want to be loving, I want to be all this, which is wonderful. But the minute you say, okay, now you've got to evaporate, because you can't get this, the minute you tell the spiritual mind, the spiritual ego, that the final goal is to let go of that person who's seeking, to let go of the thing you've identified with your entire life, it gets crazed. It does a dance like you've never seen before to avoid letting go. to avoid letting itself evaporate. And so one of the hardest parts of the spiritual journey, really, is actually getting there, or getting close. Because then the dancing is faster than ever. You know, I'm so spiritual, I'm such a good person, I'm such a good person, I'm a very good person, everybody loves me, I'm doing everything right, why should I get rid of me? Why should I have to do that? I don't ever do that. That's crazy, crazy teacher, I don't believe that guy, what's he talking about anyway? All that stuff starts to go on, and you miss it. You miss it. There's an old line, many are called, few are chosen. Every one of you sitting in this room has been called, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have made the journey. Anyone listening to this talk has been called. So who does the choosing? Who does the choosing? Well, in some deep sense, you do. And I can see it in people. I can look at people and go, I know they have chosen to do this all the way to the end, to carry this to the end. They are truly committed to this journey. They may get lost, and they may get thrown, and they may get frightened, and they may get confused along the way, but they are in it to win it, as they say on American Idol. That's the goal. And you know if you're one of those people. You really do. And the hardest thing for me is to see people who've spent their whole life wanting it and resisting it at the same time. Now, do understand there's nothing wrong with that. I read years ago that the universe, the first Big Bang, the first energy that came from the Big Bang was an opposite reaction, fighting it, containing it. It was the resistance to the Big Bang. And the entire universe is the energy of explosion and the energy of confinement. That's what makes this work. It's what we are. And we individually are that process. We are wanting it and we are fighting it at the same time. But if you want the end goal of spiritual work, and let me define that for you. The end goal of spiritual work is to realize that there's no you and there's no work. When you awaken, you realize this is an old line. You are already the thing you were looking for. You have always been the thing you were looking for. That you did not have to go on this tremendous journey. You could have just looked inside, turned your mind like that, and go, oh, I've always been there. I have always been there. I am the very thing I am seeking. I am what I am. Didn't Popeye say that? Mm-hmm. The greatest teaching. I am what I am. And I am that. I am that thing looking out. I am that thing that is seeking me. And almost everybody on the planet has to go through the long form, the long journey around the world, around their whole life, in order to find the very thing that's, bless you, the thing that has been there from the beginning. It's you. It's just you. And I say it's just you, and of course most people hear that and go, I don't want to be just me, because what you think of as just you is this crazed entity, this unhappy, seeking, unfulfilled, confused, driven, lazy, mean-spirited, self-attacking, sometimes very loving, sometimes very beautiful entity. And you don't want to be that, because why would anybody want to be that? But the revelation of awakening is that you're not that. That's a temporary configuration. It's the thing that comes into play because it keeps the world going. Everyone says love makes the world go round. Well, really, it's ego. It's really the drive, with love being a very primary aspect of that, or sex, or passion, or hunger, or need. All of those things are so important in keeping this incredible construct alive. What is this construct? I can't even begin to tell you. This universe that we live in is the most unbelievably remarkable and amazing thing there's imaginable. I don't know how it comes into being. I just know it is sustained by our ignorance, our battles, our hunger, our drive, our passion. All of this stuff keeps it going, and our journey is through all of those things, and that keeps perpetuating this thing. It wants to perpetuate itself, and we are part of that which perpetuates it. But at some point, in the fear of what all that energy is, and the frustration that we all feel in being part of it, and feeling that we're not really who we think we are, that things are other than what they appear to be, in all of this surreal element of our lives, there's a hunger for reality. Not surreal, but the real. What is the reality of this? And so we go through the unreality of it, looking for the real, and then finally realize, when we're lucky, real lies make real. The reality is the thing that's looking. The reality is the observation. The reality is that which is peering through these eyes, not the thing that's interpreting, that's the mind. The reality is just looking. It has no judgment, it has no interpretation, it has no filters. It's just pure observation. If it has any quality at all, it might best be described as love. Pure, absolute, unadulterated, simple love. In India they call it the qualities of this awakened viewer: truth, consciousness, and bliss. And that's what we are. That's what we are. And it's sitting inside us even as you listen to me talk. It's sitting there all the time. And it's peering out through this lens that has been clouded with ideas and thoughts and images that have been thrown at you by your life. And it needs to be that. But then it also needs to finally be cleared. Those who are hungry for it to be cleared arrive at a place like this. And then it's a matter of, how much do you really want it? How much do you really want it? And when you truly want it, it will not and cannot be denied. It will happen. You will go. The blinders will be taken off. The ego mind will be lifted up. There will be no filters left, and it will just be one reality. And that reality is you. Has always been you. The journey around the world, the journey through life, is a necessary journey, because for me to just tell you this now does not mean much to any of you, or many of you. So yeah, he's just saying that. Or I really, really want that, but how do I get there? And then you're back in the struggle. At some point, something breaks through. Something happens. And you get it. You get it. You go, wow. And you're done. Finished. And you walk around like this. Like, wow. Kind of a state of wonder, amazement. And you see things so clearly. I remember walking around Manchester, and I talked about this in my tapes. I would walk around and I could look at people and I saw their whole journey. Everything. I could look at people and feel all the pain and all the joy. I learned how to be present. It wasn't hard to do. We're doing it all the time. And in a certain sense, the awakening that has happened is in many ways the beginning of a spiritual life. Everything else is practice. In fact, we call this work practice. You're practicing for the very thing that ultimately becomes the real thing. Then you live it. You live a spiritual life, a life of spirit, a life of reality. And it's not always simple, it's not always easy in and of itself. I mean, one of the elements of it is that you don't know what it is. There's no way to crystallize it into anything. It just is, and it's always being. Paul Hederman, the guy whose talk I was listening to when this awakening took place, said to me at dinner one night, he said, there are no pronouns. There's no me, I, you. There's only verbs. It's just happen. There's happening. There's happening. That's all there is. And that happening is all of us. So we are on this journey of discovery, and you could arrive there right this second if you wanted to, if you were open to it. Or you can continue resisting that, which is really what you're doing, what I was doing, until you don't do it anymore. Until you just stop resisting. You just go, I surrender. I give up. I don't know what to do. I can't do it. Something just happens, and the I falls away, or the separate I falls away. And there you are. You're still there, but you're not separate from anything. So this is what we're doing. I find it kind of increasingly difficult to talk about. But for the moment anyway, they're still talking. I keep wanting everyone here to hear the message, because I know how valuable it is, and because I know some people sitting in this room have heard it and have awakened. People in my LA class, a number of people now have awakened. And I know as I say that to you, some of you are going to get very frustrated. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. One of the people who awakened in LA got so angry at me for awakening. I got so angry at these talks. Got so frustrated by everything that he was hearing that it went and he finally just got it. So there's so many variables in all this and how it all works. But all I can tell you is you're all making an effort to drive here and to come here, and you're all coming here because something in you wants this. Take it the next step. Commit to this deeply, or don't. But if you want it, it's so available. It's so not involving of struggle. It doesn't require a huge effort. But until your mind gets that, struggle and make the effort. Do what you have to do. Put out. Work at this every day. Sit every day. Ask continually. Do what you have to do until you don't have to do it anymore. And there will come a time where you don't have to do it anymore, because it's not like it's actually you doing it. It's just happening. You never were doing it. That's what you realize. There was never you doing it. So, I hope this frustrates you a lot. And I look forward to seeing those of you who show up next week. Thanks for coming, guys. Are there any questions? I should.
I don't quite know how to say this, but in the past, I've realized things, and I was very present, and then I lost it. Can you talk about...
That's part of the process.
The fear of losing it?
Yeah. I mean, this is the most common thing for all of us, actually. Part of the process is you have these experiences in meditating of becoming present, of finding the very thing I'm talking about. There it is. You realize, oh, there it is. And it's so wonderful. And you hold on to it often for the whole class or the whole meditation, or maybe for a couple hours or even a couple of days maybe. It could go longer, months, yeah. It can happen. And then you fall back into the mind-ego stuff, the weight of life. This is process. It's absolutely part of the process. And I think everyone who has ever awakened will describe exactly that experience. I have it for a period of time, longer and longer usually, and then gone. But it's fine, because it's a little bit carrot in front of the horse, you know. Once you've bit that carrot, you're going to go after it and after it and after it until this thing just happens. And it will. It will happen. And when you sit, and one of the reasons you teach is because you have that within you. It's alive within you. When you sit and you meditate, you sit and you teach, this thing is present. It's just present. Whether you evoke it or not, it's present. It's present because you're sitting there, and it needs to be present for everybody else. Even if your mind is somewhere else, it's present. And it feeds people. And at some point, I call it reaching the top of the stairs, at some point you're there. Done. And then it won't revert. It's just finished. So the thing you already know becomes a permanent condition. Now it has its own life beyond that. But there's no question or doubt left about what you are, who you are, or that you are. It's just there. And the great thing about a meditative class or a meditation practice is that anybody who does it seriously knows what we're talking about. Everyone has a moment where this brilliance shines forth, this clarity, this knowing. The only problem is, until the full experience takes place, there's a part of us that wants to own that experience, that wants to have that experience. And that's the very thing that finally has to let go. You can't have the experience. As long as you think you can have it, you lose it. When there's nobody having it, there's nothing or no one to lose it. It's just gone. Because it's there permanently. It's always there permanently. What's not there is your awareness of it. Your awareness gets caught back up in the world. And the world is very seductive. I completely get it. I mean, we all get it. You know, the world, how am I going to make enough money to pay the bills? How am I going to do this? How are we going to do that? You know, it's so mind-numbingly involving that people lose their self in it. And that's kind of what it wants. But those of us who are saying, no, I will be in the world, I will be of the world, but I will be a conscious participant. I will be awake within it. That's the amazing journey. That's the true journey. To be real in a place of unreality. And watch what you can do to that unreality. That's the most exciting thing for a human being. You can walk into the world as a presence and feed and nurture and love and give and effuse people or infuse people with consciousness and presence. They don't even know they're getting it, but it's a gift that you keep bringing into the world. You become I call it a fire hydrant of presence or love. And that's what you do. You know, some days it won't work, some days it'll be a trickle. You know, some days it'll be whatever it will be. And one of the things you learn is that it is what it is. So it's not for you to do anything. Some days it just doesn't want to flow at all. And you go, oh. But instead of going, oh my God, what's wrong with me? You just go, oh, no flow. Flow. No flow. And you don't get into it. You don't go, oh, what's wrong with me? Because that's the mind owning this experience. That's the mind saying, oh, I'm part of this. No. That's just the mind. All you do is let it be. And the mind doesn't have to own it, judge it, understand it, or do anything. It just is. And you live it out. And it's brilliant. It's completely brilliant. It knows exactly what it's doing all the time. Actually, there's not even an it. Or a you. It just is. It's not going to compute.
In a daydream or daydream-like state, in a word, would you say that is a form of presence? You're present in the daydream. For instance, you're in a beautiful place, you're walking, your mind is not looking at where you're going necessarily, where you're driving somewhere and you pass your exit because your mind is somewhere else.
Yeah,
the mind is not controlling.
No, the mind is in a daydream.
Right, so the mind has actually gone to sleep or let go?
No, the mind has just gone into a daydream.
Okay.
When you're present, you're present.
Okay.
You're right here. There's nowhere else.
So it's just a distraction?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's a nice distraction. So is sleep. It's a nice distraction.
Okay.
You know, a lot of distractions. Some people love the distraction of falling in love. Some people love the distraction of hating their neighbor. You know, it's all the same thing. It's just distraction. But when you stop being distracted, you just see it. And it's different. It's not exactly different, you just see how it's playing at you, or with you. And then you can engage it if you want. You can jump back in and be totally crazy and unconscious, or not. And kind of you say, well, why would I want to do that? Anyone else? Okay, thanks again for coming. Was there a question?
Jerry raises his hand.
I'm sorry, would you have a question? Okay, go for
Yeah,
it.
I've been going to AA for 25 years, and every time, and I must have been to 10,000 meetings, and I've heard this phrase that many times in how it works. It said we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. And I was in a meeting yesterday, and I said, whoa, wait a minute, stop. I claim spiritual perfection rather than mere spiritual progress. And I claim it not only for myself, but also for everyone else. Because then it's no longer necessary for me to judge either myself or the other person. They're already perfect.
Well, I mean, that's a nice understanding. And in a way, yes, that's true. Spiritual perfection is what we are. But when you be it, you don't have to claim it, really. It just is. Do you know what I mean? It just is. You can claim it if you want, but there's, I mean, some great teachers do claim it. But spiritual perfection is the truth of every human being. And spiritual progress, how do you get closer to the perfection you already are? I mean, there is a sense that that's what the journey is, but all I'm saying is you're already that. Why do you have to get closer to it?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, guys.